there's a person who's yelling, to not have them be aggressive and react that way if that person is just showing a little bit of anger, just to kind of sit there and be calm about it. They also have to receive a certification through the Delta Society, Therapy Dogs Incorporated, or Therapy Dogs International. Why was my focus on veterans? First and foremost, it is not covered on the VA benefits. Animal assisted therapy is, at this point, not covered. They are starting to possibly work with PAWS to allow veterans the option of having a service dog, but for the most part, animal assisted therapy at this point is absolutely not covered. There are 1/3 of the vets that are returning from war, be that Iraq or Afghanistan, are showing signs of post-traumatic stress disorder and being diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Generally, they are healthy when they do return, but for the month or 6 months that when they are back, when they start developing signs of having post-traumatic stress disorder. Many vets take medications to cope with the post-traumatic stress disorder, but it also allows them to have trouble holding down a job or dealing with everyday life because of their post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of them refuse just to talk to even anybody about having PTSD. I have a couple friends who are currently serving in the military that have been diagnosed with PTSD, and it was very hard for them to even just tell us as friends, and I've known them since we were all little. And it's a constant reliving of the traumatic event that happened. Right now, the veterans, for me, veterans are always seen as strong and, tough individuals, and a lot of them silently struggle with PTSD. They don't want to talk to anybody about it. They don't really want to show their, the true signs of what is going on in their life. And I found another video that I wanted to show you guys really quickly that kind of explains what people go through who have PTSD, and this gentleman actually received a dog to help him with that.
Cheyenne is my savior. She's the love of my life. She has always been there for me through thick and thin.
Oh, I woke you up. Oh, now you're up.
My name is David Sharp, and I've served for 6 years in the United States Air Force Security Forces. It all started right after 9/11 when we got deployed again to Uzbekistan, and a couple of our buddies didn't make it back. And so I came back home finally in March of 2002, and I pretty much segregated myself from my family and friends. My friends would go out, they would say, "Hey Dave, do you want a beer?" I'm like, "No, I'm good. I'm going to cruise around this bar, and I'm going to look at the first guy who looks at me longer than 2 seconds, I'm going to pop him." They said, "We can't hang out with you anymore, Dave. You're out of control." I was like, "Fine, I don't need you anyways." So my friend came over and he said, "Let's check out this pit bull rescue." I said, "Hell yeah, I'm a fighter. I want a fighting dog." I go down there and there's this one puppy that's not paying me any mind, but all the others are all around me. And then I remember she came over to me and she licked my hand, sniffed it, and left. And then she came and just laid back down in the dirt on the opposite side of that pen, and I said, "I'm going to get her." Cheyenne, you remember that? Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. You bum. You're a bum. You are a bum. She's a baby. This is a baby. Big baby. This is her. I brought her home, and about a couple weeks later, she witnessed me punching holes in walls and beating up the refrigerator door, and this was normal for me during this time. I see this little tail out of the corner of my eye, and I look down at her, and she's looking at me, doing this waving her head back and forth, and I looked down at her, and I just picked her up and took her back to my bed and just started crying and talking about everything that happened, what I experienced, what I'm going through, and it felt like a 10,000-pound weight was lifted off my chest. It literally did.
When I first got back from my deployment, I remember
That just kind of gives you an idea of how powerful it actually is for a person who has PTSD to have the opportunity to have a therapy dog. I wanted to talk really quickly about the components of post-traumatic stress disorder. Not a lot of people are familiar with them, so I just kind of wanted to briefly touch on. First of all, there has to be some sort of trauma that has happened in order to be diagnosed with PTSD. There has to be some sort of sign of distress. If it's, not sleeping, re-experiencing the events, having trouble falling and staying asleep, and then it's also being numb or completely avoiding the fact that some sort of traumatic event happened, completely shutting off from everybody. Difficulty sleeping, staying asleep, falling asleep, uncontrollable anger, even with staying asleep and falling asleep, having nightmares, reoccurring nightmares consistently every single night. And then the symptoms have to be present for 1 month or longer for the diagnosis of PTSD. And these are all based on the DSM manual for the statistical psychology, there we go, association. So, the ADA guidelines, there are actually guidelines that in 2010, the U.S. Department of Justice revised their ADA guidelines for Title II and Title III, stating that all dogs considered service dogs need to be individually trained to do work and perform tasks for people with disabilities. This also does include calming a person with post-traumatic stress disorder during an anxiety attack and performing other duties with them. So based on ADA guidelines, animal-assisted therapy does qualify for the part of being covered for benefits. Although it is freshly new because it was developed just in 2010, not a lot of people do know that it is considered to be under the ADA guidelines. My recommendations. So far, veterans need to be allowed, who are suffering with PTSD, the use of having an animal-assisted therapy dog for their treatment. The use of ADA to incorporate the animal-assisted therapy into therapy for veterans with PTSD. And just getting the word out. Not a lot of people are aware that ADA does have a guideline that says that they need to be covered, and that they do qualify to be covered. And animal-assisted therapy has been proven beneficial for persons with disabilities, regardless of what their disability is. It is highly beneficial for veterans with PTSD. And many clients find that even just petting, playing, or performing with an animal are fun and rewarding. So at this time, I would like to thank you for allowing me to discuss this topic with you. And I was going to open it now if there are any